And I think it was just last week, President Trump said, my biggest fear is being Herbert Hoover. I do not want to be the guy who crashes the U.S. stock market. And Iran has studied that. And what they've learned is the playbook is it's a really nice stock market you've got there. It'd be a shame if anything happened to it.
Yeah, he called it a risk of economic catastrophe. And Iran sees that, and they're using the leverage that they have. The Journal had an interesting take on this, which is that the MOU had this part about the Strait of Hormuz that was so poorly written that the U.S. thought that it opened up the Strait of Hormuz. But meanwhile, Iran reads it and they say, oh, actually, we control this strait. We're the ones who are going to decide who comes in and out. And now here we are.
I think it speaks to the flippant nature of the whole.
Okay, so this debate took a turn that I genuinely wasn't expecting after reports emerged that Israeli intelligence had uncovered an alleged Iranian plot to assassinate Donald Trump. You'd think everyone on the panel would be on the same page. They weren't. In this clip, we watched MAGA commentator Caroline Sunshine do something that completely caught me by surprise. First, she casts doubt on the intelligence itself. Then, in a twist I don't think anyone saw coming, she ends up putting Scott Jennings on the spot over which intelligence Republicans were willing to believe and which intelligence they were happy to dismiss. It's one of those debates where the contradictions become impossible to ignore. Now, if you're new here, I'm Bradley Hostin, and this is The Bradley Hostin Show. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. I need you guys to stick with me until the very end because after we watch this clip, I want to explain why I think this exchange exposed a major inconsistency in the way intelligence is treated depending on the political circumstances and why that should concern everyone. As usual, let's watch the clip and then I'll give you guys my thoughts afterwards.
Good evening, I'm Abby Phillip in New York. Breaking news tonight, an escalation from Iran. Sources tell CNN that Israel has warned the United States of a new Iranian plot to assassinate President Trump. Some American officials suggested that the Israeli report could be an effort to sway Trump as he weighs whether to intensify his posture in Iran. But it does come after days of crowds of Iranians calling for Trump's death during the funeral for the slain supreme leader. At the NATO summit yesterday, Trump appeared to reference some of the threats against him.
They want to take out the U.S. leader, me. I'm on every list. I saw things this morning. I'm on every single one of their lists. I may be gone too, because I'm their number one target. It's out all over the place. I'm their number one because they're scum.
It's the latest development that raises the question, is President Trump back to square one with Iran? This week, he said the 60-day memorandum of understanding was, quote, over. Both sides have exchanged strikes in the region. Traffic through the Strait of Hormuz has slowed significantly again. And now sources tell CNN that mediators in the region are working to get the U.S. and Iran back to the negotiating table, a last-ditch effort to salvage what they can from the ceasefire agreement. Now, remember, that agreement just laid the groundwork to start talking about Iran's nuclear ambitions and what would happen to their enriched uranium, the gap between the United States and its stated goals and any chance of achieving them right now appears to be getting wider. Joining us now in our fifth seat is Max Boot. He's a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. But before we begin and open it up here at the table, you are invited to join the conversation and the debate. Go to cnn.com/Abby. You can weigh in there. We'll get to some of your comments throughout the show. But Max, taking all of this into consideration, what seems to be the increased belligerence from Iran as a result of this funeral, after this funeral, the MOU seems to be dead in the water, and perhaps a real threat that Iran is actually actively plotting to kill Trump again. What do you make of it?
What I make of it, Abby, is that the Iran war has not really ended. I mean, remember when President Trump started this foolhardy and unnecessary war of choice at the end of February, he said it would be a war that would last about 4 to 5 weeks. And here we are about 5 months later, and unfortunately, the war is still continuing. I mean, I'm not sure that we're going to see a return to a full-blown set of hostilities, because I don't think Trump wants that, especially ahead of the midterm elections. He doesn't need gasoline prices to spike once again, especially with the U.S. petroleum reserve at its lowest level since 1983. I don't think the Iranians necessarily want a full-blown war either, because they still have a lot of damage to repair from the previous round of hostilities. But it's clear that the Iranians do want to control the Strait of Hormuz. They do want to make sure that 20% of the world's oil basically flows through their hands, which was not the case when Trump started this war. But now, since the war started, they've discovered that they have this weapon of economic destruction at their hands, and they don't want to relinquish it. And oh, by the way, Trump is still not accomplishing his goal of eradicating the Iranian nuclear program. So it's a mess. But what I foresee happening, Abby, is we're likely to be in this period of low-level hostilities where it's not quite full-blown peace, not quite full-blown war, but kind of alternating between periods of hostility and peacemaking. But again, I don't see us making much progress towards Trump's goal of ending the Iranian nuclear program.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, this was 20-something days ago. This is J.D. Vance talking about what he predicted would be a complete change in the posture of Iran as a result of this MOU. Listen.
The coolest thing about the progress we've made over the last few weeks is that you see people within the Iranian system, senior leadership, even IRGC officials say, you know what, we may have some animosity, we may have some mistrust, but we recognize the way that we've done business with the United States for 47 years is a mistake. Let's try something else.
You know, Caroline, there was really nothing at the time that suggested that he was correct. Certainly nothing in the MOU. In the MOU, it doesn't even address any concrete things about the nuclear program, Iran's support for terror in the region. So were they just hoodwinked?
Well, I think we know now why J.D. Vance was sent out to go sell the MOU. And at the time, Marco Rubio was nowhere to be found. Like, if you remember, J.D. Vance was doing interview after interview after interview, going out and selling this deal. And Marco Rubio was like, what, DJing a wedding still or something? Like, he was nowhere to be found because, as we've now seen, Vance, I think, was set up to be, the fall guy for this. I think we can all agree that if Iran were to assassinate President Trump, that would be wrong, because it is wrong to assassinate leaders of sovereign nations, which is why we should have never assassinated the Ayatollah and replaced him with a younger version. But I don't think Iran wants to assassinate President Trump, because if they were to do that, that would create a rally around the flag effect for this war in the United States that we have not seen yet, and would almost 100% guarantee that the United States has no choice but to launch a full-on ground invasion of Iran, which is the one thing Iran does not want. They have figured out what we have not figured out, which is that this is an economic war. Okay, this war does not have a military solution. We've exhausted all the good military options. What Iran has figured out is war is about studying your opponent. And they've studied President Trump very well. And I think it was just last week, President Trump said, my biggest fear is being Herbert Hoover. I do not want to be the guy who crashes the US stock market. And Iran has studied that. And what they've learned is the playbook is, it's a really nice stock market you've got there. It'd be a shame if anything happened to it.
Yeah, he called it a risk of economic catastrophe. And Iran sees that, and they're using the leverage that they have. The Journal had an interesting take on this, which is that the MOU had this part about the Strait of Hormuz that was so poorly written that the U.S. thought that it opened up the Strait of Hormuz. But meanwhile, Iran reads it and they say, oh, actually, we control this strait. We're the ones who are going to decide who comes in and out. And now here we are.
I think it speaks to the flippant nature of the whole situation. I mean, if we're being honest, I think if most Americans are being honest with themselves, this whole crisis, this war was created as a shiny object to distract so many folks from the chaos that was around this administration at the time. And what looked to be was promised a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, is now turned into some sort of endless, unprojectable end. And it speaks to the serious nature of this. It speaks to the grave danger that not only the region, but the world sits upon. And there's really two outcomes. There's either the U.S. is going to give in to Iran, continue to give and give and give and give, or we're going to have to commit ourselves and our troops and our military to some sort of effort that is going to blow us away for extended periods of time. It's going to break a lot of people's mindsets as to what Donald Trump's true intentions are there. That's the ultimatum. There is no way to negotiate. This is a propaganda war. Donald Trump is using propaganda and he's propping up the markets. He's not talking to diplomats. He's not talking to generals on an hourly basis. He's talking to financial experts that are telling him when markets are closing, when markets are opening, and when PR needs to be pushed out to change the narrative.
Scott?
You seem to know exactly who Donald Trump is talking to. How do you know that?
Well, just as an American watching it play out, it certainly feels as though there's no sort of organized fashion of what's going on.
You said he's not talking to generals, that he's only talking to, economic planners. I'm just asking how you know that. It just seems to be a wild assertion. I just wonder what evidence of that there is.
As a tax-paying American, I sit there and I watch this stuff play out within minutes after the markets close. I watch before markets open.
So no evidence. So here's what I think. I think we achieved a great military victory. The Iranian military is devastated. I disagree with Max. I don't think they're currently on the brink of building a nuclear weapon because they can't be because of the military victory that we have achieved.
I didn't say they were on the brink of building a nuclear weapon.
You said we have made any progress.
I said we have not eradicated their nuclear program. Like Trump said, they have 1,000 pounds of highly enriched uranium. They still have it.
Yeah, and it's buried beneath a significant amount of rubble.
And then they can take it out of there when they want to.
Thanks to the United States military. So that's number one. Number two.
Don't mischaracterize what I said.
After the military victory, they gave diplomacy a chance. And as the president said repeatedly, he always said, I would like to have a deal. I'm prepared for them to not behave, in which case they get nothing, and we have to go back to a military option, which is where we are today. Where it ends, I don't know. There hasn't been as much volatility in the oil market the last couple of days as some people might have projected, which is a good thing. But I do think it's true that they are not interested in rational outcomes here. And this whole threat to assassinate our president, just say one other thing, for all the people out there who've been crapping on our relationship with Israel and what we do with Israel and our alliance with Israel, they gave us intelligence to help us keep our president from being assassinated.
I think we need to focus on our intelligence, though, because our intelligence, if we listen to our intelligence, maybe we should start listening to our own intelligence, because not listening to our own intelligence agencies is how we got into this war. Our intelligence agencies assessed that Iran was not building a nuclear weapon. That assessment has not changed throughout this war.
Israel also gave us intelligence telling us that the Iranian regime was about to fall, and that proved to be terribly false. I also think that there is a bigger foreign policy mess here. If you'll remember, January 3rd extricated Maduro out of Venezuela for what was supposed to be interim elections shortly afterwards. Venezuela has now been hit by 2 devastating earthquakes, and the Maduro vice president and his entire regime is still in place. They're completely incapable and inept to responding to these earthquakes. We saw this week U.S. officials, Southcom officials, greeting and hugging and meeting with the worst of the offenders, the executor of the oppression in Venezuela, Diosdado Cabello. And he couldn't, you see, so we couldn't be in Iran when 50,000 Iranians were getting slaughtered in the streets because a fourth or a third of the U.S. Navy was off the coast of Venezuela. And that now is a hot mess. The woman who gave him the peace prize, she's not even allowed back in her country. And there is nothing this administration is doing to do that. Iran is a quagmire. It feels like every other day they tell us that this is about to end, and it doesn't end. And Cuba, you got 10 million people without electricity, a grid that has completely collapsed, and a bunch of Cuban Americans in Miami wondering when the hell it's going to be their turn.
So to your point about whether this will be a quagmire, one of our viewers has a question. Where does the panel think that the U.S. will be a year from now in Iran? I mean, Max, you suggested that it's like an on-again, off-again conflict. But where does that end? Are we going to do that forever?
Well, to coin a term, Abby, it looks an awful lot like a forever war. You know, one of those forever wars that Trump was promising to end, and he just started one, and he doesn't know how to get out of it because he thought that the Iranian regime would fall within a few days, which no serious intelligence analyst, which the U.S. intelligence community, nobody really believed that. But Trump seemed to think that because Netanyahu told him that. Clearly, that's not the case. He doesn't have an exit strategy. And so we're basically stuck with this hostile regime, which is as big of a threat as ever to the rest of the region.
But if Republicans lose the House and or the Senate, can that change? Can a Democratic House and or Senate put some guardrails on Trump?
I doubt it because, you know, he has huge authority as commander in chief. He doesn't listen to Congress. I'm not sure that there's much like the only authority
for what?
The only authority he recognizes, as we were discussing earlier, is the market. So he doesn't want to do something that thanks the market.
Guardrails for what? To go back to a world where we're all rainbows and unicorns with the Iranians? They've been at war with us for 47 years.
Rainbows and unicorns.
47 years? Okay.
Nobody has been rainbows and unicorns with the Iranians.
Why didn't I learn about the 40? I'm sorry. The first time I've ever heard about the 47-year Iran war was like this year. Like, we don't
I'm
teach
sorry, you
about
don't
the
read much.
47-year war with
you just
Iran in
start
school.
following the
Like,
news
it's
this year?
insulting to
It's insulting.
actual conflicts
It's
that we've
insulting to
been
intelligence
involved
that you
in
have no idea
to
what the
say that
Iranians
we've
have
been at
done
war with
to
Iran.
us for
How
47
many Americans
years.
have they killed on U.S. soil in 47 years in the war that we've
They
been
have
at
killed
with them?
thousands of Americans. They have maimed American soldiers.
Yeah,
they have
which is
attacked
all
American
wrong.
allies, and they
But
have been
why
at
have our
war
soldiers been
with
over
the
there?
West ever since this regime came to power. And it is their intention to build a nuclear weapon and use it on us and use it on Israel and use it on the West. That is their intention, and they state it every
they
day.
intend to just keep using the Strait of Hormuz. They have now learned that they can behave like a nuclear power without ever needing to be one. But okay, so like if we're going to keep going with this, what number of American troops are we willing to commit to keep going? And like, what's your number? Like, how many U.S. troops are you willing to expend to achieve your objectives? And what amount of money? Because like we're not having that conversation, and we need to, because we've already spent $300 billion. We've already lost. Like,
what
those
amount
are
of
the
money am I
questions
willing to
we
expend
need to answer.
to keep
Those
the
are the
American
guardrails
people
we're
safe
talking about
from the
with
worst
Congress.
regime in the world? A fair amount.
Okay, Iran, nobody is like, first of all, Iran does not have a nuclear weapon. They don't want a nuclear weapon. And nobody is firing a nuke at a country that has 5,000 of them. You understand? Like, nobody is firing a nuclear weapon,
as Max knows,
at a
and
country
B,
that has 5,000 of
and B,
them.
you're
That's not
arguing
happening.
that there's some sort of a rational actor here. They're irrational people. It's pretty apparent.
Oh,
is
I
it
think
not?
they're very.
I think one of the other things about this, Scott, I heard you earlier saying that if they don't behave well, they don't get anything. Why is this always about what they get? What about what we need to get? We need to get the uranium.
Yeah.
We need to get inspectors on the ground. We need to get the we need Iran to stop funding terror. And it seems like there's actually no mechanism whatsoever for us to get any of those
safely navigate
things.
through the Strait of Hormuz.
And the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, that was the point of attempting diplomacy. But what they've learned is there was always a high percentage chance this was not going to work.
In the absence of diplomacy, what is the mechanism for us to get any of those things that we say we need?
In the absence of diplomacy,
Yeah. Because you're saying
vigilance
diplomacy
and
is
willingness
done.
to pummel these people
You're saying
into
diplomacy
submission.
is done.
Well, I
We're
don't
just
know that. I don't know that.
gonna basically bomb them forever. But bombing
don't know
them
that
forever
either.
doesn't get us the nuclear material. It doesn't get us inspectors. It doesn't get us a change of their actual behavior. What does it get us?
It doesn't get us lower oil prices either.
You posited that the choice was diplomacy or this. I don't know that diplomacy is done. Maybe it's not. I sort of think at the moment that it is. But number two, just like with any irrational bad actor, you have to be willing to monitor and pummel as needed. I mean, that is what will have to
Sure,
happen.
but again, how are we getting the things we want? That doesn't answer the question.
Well, I mean,
We can pummel them all we want, but we don't get a single thing as a result of that.
what do you mean? If we
What do we-
pummel,
what do we get,
if we
Scott?
disable through military action their ability to wage war in the region or do any of the things you mentioned, that would be a good
We
outcome.
pummeled them
how
at the
has that
beginning of the
gone for
war.
us? I mean, respectfully, 2 weeks ago, we said we were going to strike Iran. And you know what they did? They said, oh, okay, if you do that, we're going to treat Elon Musk's Starlink infrastructure in the region as military assets, since Starlink helps the U.S. military. And we didn't go through with the strikes. You want to know why? Because SpaceX's IPO was scheduled for 2 days later. Like, there's no military solution to this conflict. Iran has figured out that this is a stock market war. And so, I mean, they blunted our strikes. Like, you see how the chess works, right? We're the greatest fighting force in the world, but it's time to bring them home because there's not a military solution to this that doesn't involve us being over there years from now, which is what we don't want to that viewer's question.
We will leave it there. Next for us, the
I do like a little bit.
So let me give you guys my thoughts because I never thought I'd be saying this. I actually found myself agreeing with Caroline Sunshine. Trust me, that was not on my bingo card. But let's be honest about what this debate was really about. The question isn't whether Iran poses a threat to Donald Trump. The question is whether the intelligence being presented should simply be accepted at face value without scrutiny. And on that point, I think Anna Navarro and Caroline Sunshine raised legitimate questions. The United States has been down this road before. We've seen intelligence assessments turn out to be wrong. We've seen governments make decisions based on faulty information, and we've seen the consequences of those decisions play out for years afterward. That's why I think healthy skepticism is important. What also stood out to me is Israel's position in all of this. Israel has a clear national security interest in what happens with Iran. That's not a controversial statement, it's just reality. Every country acts in what it believes are its own national interests. Because of that, I think any intelligence, whether it comes from Israel, the United States, the United Kingdom, or any other ally, should be carefully verified before decisions are made. That's just common sense. And this is where Scott Jennings lost me. It often feels like his first instinct is to defend Donald Trump rather than step back and ask whether the evidence actually supports the claim being made. Good intelligence should be tested. It should be challenged. It should be corroborated. It shouldn't be accepted simply because it fits a preferred political narrative. That's why I actually enjoyed watching Caroline Sunshine push back on Scott Jennings. You don't often see Republicans forcing other Republicans to defend their own inconsistencies, and I thought that made for one of the more interesting parts of the debate. At the end of the day, decisions involving war, military action, and national security are far too important to be based on assumptions or unquestioned intelligence. They require evidence. They require scrutiny. And they require leaders willing to ask difficult questions before acting. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more news commentaries. I'll see you guys in the next one.